Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of the BigFooty Bombercast for season 2022. Whether you're listening to us on your couch or driving in a car to Maryborough, we thank you for tuning in. And as always, please remember to like, review, and subscribe to us on whatever media you are using to listen. Of course, I am joined by my co-host, as always, the Grizz. How are you this evening, the Grizz?
I'm good. Slightly disappointed by the result last night, but it's great to have some football back in our lives, I think.
It is certainly great to have some football, especially back on the TV, although I did watch the game against the Dogs on KO. But our first guest for the year is none other than Kiptastic. How are you, mate?
Thanks for having me. I'm glad that you were willing to have me back again for season 22. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a very interesting season and really excited about how the Bombers are going to go this year.
We'll dive right into what we've seen so far, boys, and we've seen 2 games so far, and I think the main thing that stood out for me across the 2 games so far has just been our forward line. I think our forward line at the moment is starting. It's a work in progress. It's something we knew we were going to struggle with. I mean, we didn't have Cale Hooker, who's obviously retired. Tip and Woody is still indefinite, and Stringer has obviously been injured. So we've been probably missing our 3 main avenues of attack in the first 2 games. So it was always going to be a work in progress and always look a little bit different. Peter Wright looks all right. Kane Baldwin's come on. I'd still probably have France in front of me. But yeah, overall, I think our forward line this year is going to be something that we definitely need to work on as we go along.
It's definitely going to be makeshift, especially until Tipper comes back. It's likely that we'll have to run someone like a Guelph or a Perkins will have to play a lot more forward to try and get that creative flair, or in Guelph's case, the pressure. I did like seeing Wright kick those 3 goals and take those big marks. It was a bit concerning that he hadn't been doing that in the first practice match against the Dogs and even the intra-club game that they televised. So to see him perform there was quite good and good signs for the future.
I think the forward line is going to be a watch this space all year. I think particularly our smalls. I think the tools, provided everyone's fit, I think everyone probably expects Peter Wright, Harry Jones and Francis when he's fit, although I think it's the knee he got from the Bulldogs game is still touch and go. They might just try and rest him for round 1, and they might just try to go small and swap Stringer for Baldwin and just go a bit smaller down at Cardinia Park, or they might keep him in for the 3 tools. But the smalls is really where I'm probably concerned about. Outside of Perk, who, showed a lot. We'll probably get to him a little bit later in terms of the guys that stood out. But outside of Perkins, there's really not a lot of X factor. Snelling's great, workman style. Mac Welfie, good for pressure. Made some real physical attempts at laying tackles and at the ball. But, Dev Smith has lost a step. And, he might be the fittest he's been for a while, but he just lacks that pace and that explosiveness that he had when he first came to the club. And so I think it's just going to be a watch this space all year until Waller gets back and while Stringer plays up in the midfield. We sort of need his size and power through the midfield, but when he leaves the forward 50, we just look sort of aimless. And look, it's worth noting that the entries going inside 50 were horrendous for the most part of the night. We really didn't deal with St Kilda's frontal pressure at all. But yeah, I think small forwards is our biggest problem this year.
The pleasing thing was that we created so many opportunities, and you would think that as they go through the season, they're going to get better at hitting those targets closer to goal or in areas that are more dangerous. So the fact that we're still creating those opportunities, and particularly after the first quarter, really dominated general play and just couldn't put it on the scoreboard, suggests that it's only a few small tweaks before we still are able to put that score on the board that will win games.
It's interesting, Grizz, that you actually just mentioned noting that the delivery had been terrible, because I did note last week that we'd been much slower with our ball movement, especially when we don't get the ball into Nick Hine. We do lose that run and gun, and that was evident against the Saints, I thought the Saints shut Nick Hine down really well. He had a couple of moments there where he got out in the break and we looked fantastic, ball in hand, and looked lightning quick, like the slingshot Essendon of old, I suppose you'd call it. But by and large, they shut him down, and so our ball movement had to be a lot slower, had to be a lot more methodical, and yeah, it was quite poor at times, which, I mean, you can obviously put some of that down to pre-season nerves, pre-season sloppiness.
Yeah, I think first game of the year, second sort of serious game of the year after the Bulldogs game, skills were always going to be sloppy. Brad Hill said after the game for St Kilda that it was pretty hot and humid, so maybe there was some slippage, but the ball movement was really slow. I think St Kilda's pressure was really good, sort of coming front on. I can't help but feel that the slower, deliberate style play is a truck thing. We were terrible at defending transition last year. We were the worst in the league in conceding an inside 50 after it got rebounded out of our forward 50. So I can't help but feel that's sort of a deliberate thing to be able to set up behind the play. But you're right, when it's not Nick Hind or Pidge running through the middle of the ground, taking the game on, we look really slow and we just got stuck bombing it long to contests all night.
You have to sort of reflect on the fact that our run and gun slingshot style came about a lot because we had Adam Sard and Connor McKenna. And with both of those gone, and Hind, he did so well last year, but he's also now more of a known quantity that teams are going to start sitting on him. But maybe it's a force change, especially we have, Heppel's gone behind the ball as well, so that's taken away some pace. You did bring up McGrath, and it looks like he's going to be playing more from the back half, so he could provide some more of that dash and run. But it might just be that the personnel's changed to the point that they have to make changes as well with the way they move the ball.
Do you think a part of the reason why we also maybe looked that little bit slow is because we seem to be pushing Redmond a lot further up the ground? He seems to be playing, like I know last year he did get up the ground and kick at those goals every now and then, but I thought he played very much half back last year, and now it seems to me like they've decided he's going to be a wingman, which it's a little bit like robbing Peter to pay Paul, isn't it? Because you sort of lose some of that movement from the half back line, you're moving up to the wing, but did we really need it on the wing as such? Because he's just, to me, not getting behind the ball as much as he did when he played down back. And I think there's better options for the wing than Mason Redmond.
I did notice he was further up the field. I wasn't sure in the first quarter whether that was because we had a few defenders that were sort of running their own race and not sort of playing as close to their man as they could be. And I noticed that Laverty came on the field like someone had lit his pants on fire. And so I think a couple of the defenders may have been told to stick their man a bit. But I think his ball use is so good, you want him kicking inside 50. But I think our methodical style plays because we want to set up behind the football, and that means getting guys sort of ahead of the football, up around the wing, half-forward area to lock it in. But you're right, when Redmond's not there, it's really Hind only, and he sort of struggled, I think, Hind, without the guys like Redmond and Pidgeon giving him some chop out to coming off half-back.
I think they also like Redmond, as he said, delivering inside 50, but also providing that option for that long kick for goal. He did it on Saturday night, and he did it quite well a few times last season. And I think with, again, the acquisition of Jake Kelly is going to release Ridley, and Ridley's got excellent foot skills. So maybe trying to rely more on that foot skill way of moving up the ground rather than the foot speed.
Yeah, Ridley is the interesting one here for me as well, because I'm still not sure that we know exactly what Jordan Ridley's best role is as a football side and probably as a supporter base. We want the ball in Jordan Ridley's hands, absolutely, because he's probably, it's controversial, but I'd say he's nearly our best kick at the club. Zach Merritt's a great kick, but you put the ball in Ridley's hands and it's almost... It's a big reach here, but it's almost James Hurd-like in that if we're under pressure in the back line, give it to Ridley because he'll do something good. He'll make something happen. So the question now, I think, is do we want Ridley to play that loose third defender, similar to what an Alex Rance used to do, or do we want him to be a lockdown, tight defender who occasionally gets the ball and really has to work to find the ball the other way, because he is brilliant one-on-one as well. So, yeah, for mine at the moment, I think... mentioning Jordan Ridley, he's stuck between two worlds, and for mine, we've got to find out which world we're going to get him into before round one rolls around. It's
hard to see him always playing that loose role, especially with Heppel back there playing more of that general sort of filling the hole like a Luke Hodge type. But we saw with Ridley that I think he's equally as good as a one-on-one defender as he is with the ball in hand, but we just have competent one-on-one defenders, but we don't have that as good a release kick as him. So I think leaning more towards that, distributor role as opposed to a lockdown role is probably where they'll end up.
Yeah, I see Ridley in this Tom Stewart, James Sicily mould of defender, where they can defend one-on-one and they're very good at defending one-on-one. But what Geelong's defence does really well for, say, Tom Stewart is they set up in a way which allows Tom Stewart to peel off and intercept Mark. And I think that's where we want to get to a place with Ridley where guys like Laverty and Stewart are doing the man-to-man roles and Ridley's able to roll off. I did notice against St Kilda and the Bulldogs, he was playing a lot of last line of defence, which maybe he's the best reader of the play at the club, so that maybe allows him to push off his opponent when he knows he can get involved. But I don't think it's sort of controversial at all to say he's the better kick in the team. I think Zach Merrett's probably the best decision maker in the team, but in terms of pure foot skills and the ability to hit any kick in the book, I think Jordan Ridley is well and truly the best at the club.
That's a good description of Zach Merrett. Best decision maker is a great way of putting it, because he certainly does appear to have a lot of time and space whenever he gets the ball, no matter where he is. But there's another bloke who he hasn't debuted for us yet. I was going to say it was his debut, but he did play against the Bulldogs, so it was his second pre-season game, who appeared to have a ton of space, and that's Nick Martin. I mean, he had so much time and space. He just had composure oozing out of him on Saturday night, and I'm very excited to see how he goes. I think somebody on our board was comparing him, saying, he could be our Michael Barlow, which is a massive call, because Michael Barlow, I don't know if you blokes remember, but he was pretty much on track to win a Brownlow before he hurt himself in his first year.
Supercoach legend.
Yeah,
Michael Barlow.
Yeah. So I mean, I look at someone like Nick Martin, and I'm very excited by him. And I mean, I've only seen him play the 3 times, but I'm super excited to see what he can do this year.
A little bit of a downer. He's obviously playing very well, and you wonder how he's ever been missed in the drafts to this point. What are the knocks on him that led to him not being drafted? I guess the only area of caution I'd have is that he's come on for the second half of games, so he's come on fresh, where he's got fresh legs against more tired bodies, and he's able to use that to his advantage. I mean, other players are coming on at the same time and not showing the same level of performance. So maybe that's just a bit of me putting some dampener on the fire, but he does seem to be rushing towards a round 1 debut the way he's going.
Don't be a Debbie Downer. He's going to win the Brownlow.
I do remember when the news was he was coming to train for us, EDPS, who is a resident draft board expert for Essendon and all things alike, said he's basically Kyle Langford when Kyle Langford was 19 years old. And you can see it. They're almost identical in height, similar skill set. He finds space so well, which is something that a Kyle Langford did sort of early in his career, particularly in junior level. I sort of agree with Kip in the sense that he's been coming on halfway through games and been running against guys who have been running out for a first half and a bit, but you can't teach guys how to find space like he does. And the thing that I really liked was, he sort of missed a couple of handballs, missed a couple of kicks, but he always looked poised. He didn't really ever look like it was all too much for him. Whereas I think, even Braden Ham at different points on Saturday night looked like he just couldn't go with the pace of the game, and he was worrying, and he was sort of panic kicking at times. So that's a really good trait. I think he'll be a guy that plays a lot of VFL football before he plays AFL, but who knows, with our smaller forward depth at the moment, he might get a gig earlier than we'd think.
If Martin does come on, and does that mean the immediate future of Nick Cox is in trouble? Because it seems that the best spot for Martin at the moment is the wing. You'd probably have Langford on the other wing, and given Cox seems to be struggling to adjust to his body in terms of just knowing what he needs to do, does that mean Cox goes back to the VFL in place of Martin, who's the rising performer, so he can learn a bit more about what his new body's going to take in terms of the performance that is required? Now,
those who aren't watching the podcast, obviously you guys are listening to the recording. We have a system here where you can put your hand up, and as soon as you mention Nick Cox, I got my hand up so fast you would not believe. I know, Grizz, you want to raise this later, but I'm just going to go on a bit of a rant now. The guy is in his second year, and somebody on our board has already suggested he's peaked and he's regressed. Are we fucking serious? And we don't swear often on this podcast, but fuck me, the guy's in his second year. He's put on 12 kilos since he's come to the club. He's playing in a role that it's probably not really his. The wing, and 555, as he's known on the board, has raised the point before that Cox is not going to be a wingman moving forward. But it's a position that gets him around the ball, gets him touches. How the hell can you say he's regressed and gone backwards in his second year? What is wrong with people sometimes? You
probably touched on everything I was going to say. I probably wasn't going to put it as sternly as you did, but I think the normal "it's only pre-season" moniker really applies here in the sense of there are a lot of guys who struggled on Saturday night. I looked at the disposal count and the time on ground count. There were plenty of guys who got the 40 less than Nick Cox did, who played a lot more game time than Nick Cox did. So I think what you said, Bonts, in terms of this is purely about development. We need to sort of disregard statistics for the first, I think, first couple of years of his career while his body gets to a point where he can compete consistently. I've said it basically since we drafted him. I think he's the evolutionary centre half forward in that he's 200 centimetres. He can run like the wing, elite foot skills, power, agility, all that sort of stuff. That's where I think he could be his most dangerous. But we play him on the wing to start with because it gets him in the side, and he probably can't play as a key forward at the moment.
Yeah, look, I might have been going a little bit harsh on people there, but it infuriates me when a bloke in his second year, in the first official practice game of the year, so to speak, and people are going, he's regressed. The thing is, if he kicked those 2 goals on Saturday night and had 13 touches or 14 touches, whatever it was, and kicked 2 goals, we'd be saying it was a good game. So that's how close he is at the moment. He's on that wafer thin margin where his good and his bad aren't actually that far apart. Now, I'm not saying he won't play VFL, and in fact, I actually expect he probably will start in the VFL this year because, as you said, Grizz, we don't have a spot for him up forward, and I think that is going to be his spot moving forward. It's just baffled me. And I have no doubt that when I tagged you into that thread and you read that comment, you would have been smiling to yourself because I raised that exact point last week on this podcast, that our fans can be very fickle at times and get way too far ahead of themselves and make rash calls after one practice game.
Yeah, 1 year of finals. Let's keep the expectations realistic, guys. This is still a development phase for the club. We're going to play a lot of kids who are going to have a lot of good weeks and then a lot of really bad weeks and some weeks in the VFL in between. We just need to ride this out. We're not competing for a premiership this year. There's a good chance we don't even make the finals this year when you look at our draw in comparison to guys like Fremantle and Carlton who have a much easier draw. So we all just need to lower our expectations here and just look for the development of guys and the development of the team as opposed to the statistical output and the wins and losses.
We will move on, Grizz, because you do have a new segment for us coming up very shortly. But there is just one more point I want to raise, and that is Kane Baldwin at the moment. Now, I thought he was very good on Saturday night. For a bloke that's playing probably his second real competitive hit out in about 2 years. I mean, he played, half a game last year in the VFL or a game and a half in the VFL, but by that stage, it was pretty clear the VFL had done its dash and there weren't going to be finals and all that sort of stuff. So I was super impressed with him on Saturday night. I don't think he's good enough to get round one. I would still take Francis because I thought Francis actually worked himself into the game against the Bulldogs really well. So if I was Essendon, I'd probably pick Francis, but there is talk and rumours coming out that Baldwin has been locked in. So he's going to be a real success story for us this year if he turns up and kicks, a goal a game for whenever he gets his opportunity.
Absolutely. And I think, there are still things he's working on with his body. You can sort of tell that he's really holding back his kicks at the moment. He's not wanting to extend that too far. But the working up the ground, so he's taking marks at the defensive 50 and using that to launch attacks. And then, that turn of speed to get that holding the ball in the forward 50 was really impressive. Those 3 steps were really quick. And if he can use that on the lead, that's going to make him a very dangerous forward as well as he'll build into his contested marking.
Yeah, I think the Baldwin versus Francis question is really the only question we have in terms of selection going into round one. I think guys like Shield, Stringer and Jake Kelly will probably come straight into the team. Guys like Cutler, Ham and maybe another third unlucky one will go out. It's really just a question of, okay, does Truck want to go smallish with Stringer, Wright and Jones, or whether he wants that third tall? I think he's a long game prospect. You've got to remember, 2 knee recos. He'll still be trying to get confidence through his body. There's only so many laps of an oval and pre-season sessions you can do. You've got to get out there. And he had a really nice rundown tackle of, I think it was Bo Wilkes out there. And I think his blocking off the ball for Peter Wright on a couple of occasions was fantastic. If he gets a run, great. If Francis comes in, fine. But I think, that Baldwin-Francis question is probably the only major selection drama we have going into round one. And it'll be interesting to see how it goes.
I actually feel as you sort of say, we have a pretty settled 22. I think if you sort of think about it, and given that we seem to be pretty injury-free, other than obviously Tipper's coming from a fair way back and probably won't play for the first, 5 or 6 rounds at the very least, and then also the wild card of Hurley. And it's just more about, where do people start? How much time do they spend on ball? How much time do they spend rotating in the back line, such as McGrath, or the forward line, like a Shield or a Parrish or a Caldwell? But we've got a pretty good depth chart going into the season at this point.
Okay, well, I think that's everything we wanted to touch on. So what we're going to do, guys, is we're going to play sort of a little game, a speed round of topics. It's called That's Real or It's Only Preseason. I'm going to give you a topic, and I want you to give me your hottest take, both in terms of time and what you genuinely believe on that statement. So that's real means you think it's something that's going to carry over into the regular season, and It's Only Preseason it's a fluky thing, like a guy kicking 8 goals in the Red Season never being seen again. Okay, so topic 1 is Archie Perkins is this year's biggest X factor.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I think that's real. He has shown a lot in the first couple of games. Again, it's only preseason, but he's shown a lot, and he's had a number of near misses. I think he probably could have kicked another 2 or 3 goals compared to what he kicked on Saturday night. And with Tipper out, we do need that sort of smallish, exciting forward, which I think he will be able to fill that role. Not to the same level as Tipper with the chase down tackles, but I think as a goal sneak, as a goal threat, I think Archie Perkins can definitely be our X factor player moving into this season. Yeah,
agreed on that. That's a real one there. Just the way that he moves through traffic. It's going to create different problems for defenders. And if he can fix up his kicking in terms of shooting for goal, which he didn't have the greatest accuracy last year, then he's going to be quite a danger.
Yeah, I think that's real as well. I think Sterling Looms is the workhorse. Guelph is the defensive pressure, but with Waller out, we're really going to need sort of Archie to step up and provide some sizzle and some goal kicking ability from our mediums when Stringer's up in the midfield. Okay. Topic 2, real or it's only preseason, our transition defense has not improved from last year. Just for a bit of background, last year we were the worst team in the competition in transition defense. We allowed teams to convert a rebound 50 into an inside 50, 25% of the time, dead last in the competition. Real or it's only preseason, our transition defense hasn't improved from last year.
I would like to say that it's only preseason simply because you haven't got all the players in their proper positions through the practice games. It's trying different things. As much as you'd like to win every game, you're also working on other things. I wouldn't make that call until we actually saw what was happening in the season proper. So for the moment, I'd say it's only preseason. You'd imagine they'd been working on it pretty thoroughly through the off season.
Yeah, I'll say it's only preseason simply because to say it hasn't improved. I mean, surely it can only go up from where it was last year. It can't get any worse than what it was. So it has to have improved at least somewhat compared to last year. So I think the wording of the question, Grizz, means it's definitely only preseason. But I will just say a few times on Saturday night, I saw Zach Merritt, I saw Jai Caldwell, I saw Darcy Parish. Our midfielders deep in defence. They really pushed hard to run back. So yes, teams will open us up at times, and early St Kilda probably opened us up more than what we wanted. But I think as the game moved on and our midfielders probably remembered the game plan rather than just playing as their instincts, which you tend to do in the first quarter or so of a preseason game, I think we improved. So yeah, I think that's only preseason.
I think it's only preseason, but it's only preseason-ish. I think we've got 3 games to start the year against pretty good opposition. We've got 3 teams that finished in the top 4 by the end of the home and away season last year. So if we haven't improved, it will show, and if we have improved, it will show pretty quickly.
You can't sit on the fence. You cannot sit on the fence.
It's preseason-ish, but we will find out by round 4 of this year.
I think Breeze has got a few splinters at the moment.
I definitely do. Okay. Goal kicking looms as a serious problem this year. We kicked 9-17 against the Saints last night. We don't have the liberty of being able to kick like that this year.
That's pre-season. Last year, so we've lost Hooker, but when we went on our good run in the second half of the year, his performance had dipped. And then he was dropped. Obviously, Tipper is a big loss, and he's quite an accurate kick. But I think just in general play last year, we were pretty good at goal scoring and pretty good at sharing the load. So I think that's just, as it was said on the telecast, it was quite a humid night. So the ball was quite slippery. Obviously, We're not going to be playing in such heat, hopefully, across the season. So that shouldn't be as much of an issue. So hopefully better weather conditions will mean that the goal kicking is improved as well.
I think it's only a preseason. I'm not too concerned about our goal kicking. I don't think it's much worse than any other side in the AFL. Yeah, we had a bad one on Saturday night, but, bad nights happen. You got to remember too, once we put Stringer back in, because Stringer is a pretty straight kick, and then obviously I think Tipper's probably our best shot for goal that we've got from a set shot. Once you sort of get those two blokes back in, that 9-17 is probably more, I don't know, I'm trying to do the maths in my head at the moment, 13-13, 14-12 type stuff. So I'm not too concerned about that at all.
I'm not too concerned considering how well we kicked towards the end of last year. But like I said, we probably don't have the liberty to kick like we did last night against St Kilda. But you will have those nights every now and again. Okay, so we have two more. The first is, real it's only pre-season, the stricter 50-metre penalty rules, i.e. regarding time wasting and all that sort of stuff, are a game changer for 2022.
I think it's only going to be pre-season purely because I think the players will adapt. We saw Melbourne in the very first game. They're pretty undisciplined, and a few times they sort of did that whole which player do I? That's crap. That is the delay of the game, and if that relates to 50 now, it'll stop the players from doing it straight up. So I think excessive 50s are only going to be the preseason. I think players will switch on pretty quickly, and I'm just going to extend a little bit, Grizz, and just say something which I'll get you guys to comment on as well. The thing about the abuse of the umpires, I understand that there's a lot of frustration because it's probably gone a little bit too far in that some of the leaner or the less aggressive abuse is now going to be stung by 50. But at the end of the day, what excuse do they have to abuse the umpire or to question the decision or to throw the head back? Other sports, watch rugby union. If they treated their referee the way we treat our umpires, they'd be getting red cards left and right. I mean, I've played union, and you can't talk to the bloke without calling him sir. So this whole, it's a passionate sport. These guys, you can't ask them to control their emotions. We're not asking them to control your emotions. We're just asking you not to be a dickhead when a decision's paid against you.
I'm not big on the defending players when they mouth off on umpires, just on the basis of, I know people go, not everything whittles down to the junior level, but that absolutely does. If you see, Scott Pendlebury, you see Nat Fyfe, you see Dustin Martin, you see, insert superstar here mouthing off to that umpire, what's the 10-year-old going to think? But I'm with you, Bon. So the players know exactly what they're doing. They're far too smart to not know what they're doing. And there was one yesterday with GWS in Collingwood where Darcy Moore, clearly looked at the umpire. The umpire said, pass it back. Moore put his head down, took 4 or 5 steps, then turned to pass the ball, and then looked shocked when he paid a 50. Players know exactly what they're doing. I'm slightly concerned that this is going to be a bit like the stand rule last year where they were hot on it early, but then sort of mid parts of the year, they sort of died off and it wasn't really a rule anymore. And then towards the back end of the year, they kicked it back in. But but I agree in the sense if they're strict consistently on it, it won't be in there for very long. Players will adapt.
I agree. Your interpretation there of, they're going to be hot on it for the first couple of weeks and then it'll go away is what I agree with. But they need to do something because we just said last year had the Toby Green stuff and, some people have tried to defend that, but it's just an escalation of behaviours. And I don't know how many people have paid close attention to tennis post the Australian Open, but if you look what Zverev did, I think at the Mexican Open, that's
crazy.
That's the sort of thing that happens. That's the sort of thing that you get to if you don't crack down on the minor behaviours. So I think it's a good call from the AFL. I think it will filter down to the lower ranks in terms of zero acceptability for that sort of action, and the players, if as soon as it costs a team a game for the action from one of their individual players, the teams will stop it pretty quickly.
And we saw with Dev Smith last year where Dev Smith was continually mouthing off at the umpires, and it got to a point where it was almost a detriment to the team and a detriment to Devon because he wasn't getting free kicks even if they were there. And that's just what happens, right? When you're a jerk to the umpires, they're not going to care if you get upset. They're not going to give you the benefit of the doubt anymore. And just on the umpiring and the time wasting thing, I'm going to zag slightly here. I love it. Nothing frustrates me more than when you see players, standing over the footy and stopping guys from getting it to get it for a free kick. Like Mrs. Grizz would have heard me complaining about it 1,000 times. We want to speed the game up. As an Essendon supporter, we play better when the game's sped up. I think it's a great rule. I'm looking forward to it. Last one, we sort of touched on another one we're going to do regarding Cox and Jones. So I'm going to throw a curly one in here for you guys, in that Peter Wright looms as our most important forward this year. And I'm not expecting him to lead the team in goal kicking, but I think structurally he gives us something we're not quite sure. But I'm interested in you guys. It's real or only pre-season. Peter Wright looms as our most valuable forward this year.
If he brings his form from the second half of last year as a forward, and obviously towards the start of last year, he had to play a lot of time in the ruck, he's going to be a 40-goal-a-year forward. And they're becoming as rare as hen's teeth. And with the ability to also, relieve Draper in the ruck and potentially that allowing Draper to go forward as well, I tend to agree that that's a key part of our forward line. You need that key focal point to provide that structure that the other players can roll off.
I think he will be our most important forward this year. I agree. That's not just a pre-season thing. That is something that will happen. However, and I'm just going to throw this in, and Grizz, feel free to tell me I'm an idiot afterwards, but his position is going to come under intense scrutiny over the next couple of years. It won't be this year. He'll definitely be important this year. But we've got Baldwin, Jones, we've got Francis, who I think Francis up forward will be a star this year, but we'll see that. Then you've also got Nick Bryan in there. They all can't play in the side. And if Jones, Baldwin, Francis and Nick come on like we think, Peter Wright's going to be the man on the outer, which is crazy to talk about now because he's going to be our most important forward this year. But there is a real chance that come, maybe not this time next year, but a couple of seasons' time, he's going to be the man on the outer.
Yeah, I think his ability to chop out ruck probably puts him in a different sort of category in terms of position to Baldwin and Francis and Jones, in that they're not really relief ruckmen. But I think you're spot on in that Nick Bryan and Peter Wright will be competing for that spot. One thing I'm going to say about Peter Wright is that he needs to start clunking everything he gets his hands to. He has a couple. He's a bit Charlie Dixon-esque in how he gets his hands to marks that he just inexplicably drops. And if he holds those, he goes from being a 35-goal-a-year forward to being a 45, 50-goal-a-year forward. But I think I'm with you. If he maxes out as a 30-goal-a-year forward, I think Nick Bryan's come for his spot really quickly.
The other thing to think about with that is over the next couple of years, you've got Ben King and then Harry Mackay coming off contract. If Peter Wright's performing very well and he's getting up to that 45, 50 goal a year, it may actually change the club's perspective on whether they need to actually go for one of those players as the focal point.
That's a good point. I'm still not convinced that we'll actually chase a Ben King or Harry Mackay because I do think our forward line stocks at the moment look relatively promising. But that will do us for this evening, fellas. Thank you both for joining. Grizz, it's been a pleasure as always.
Thanks for having me on. Look forward to it.
And yeah, thanks for coming on for your first episode this year, Kip.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
So as I did mention at the top, guys, if you are enjoying listening to the podcast, please like, rate and subscribe, whether it be on Spotify, possibly on YouTube or even on the iTunes. If you do enjoy, we do like to get as much content, as much followers as we can because it does boost our rating and just helps us out in the back end. But thank you all, and we'll see you next week where we'll do a little bit of a different show. We're going to do a bit of a pre-season for what do we think is going to happen in the season 2022.